Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox and welcome to the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. Today I'm extraordinarily pleased to have my good friend and colleague Jay Rosen with me. Jay is a Vice President at Merrill Brink, and we're going to talk to Jay about translations, but more importantly, how can you use translations in your compliance program going forward. Jay's got a lot of experience in this area, and one of the things that has impressed me about not only Jay but the company is how they are trying to use what was formerly believed to be something that was really an investigative tool or technique to move it to a more proactive approach to really help the compliance practitioner going forward. So with that, Jay, if I could ask you to tell us where you came from and more importantly how you got to Merrill Brink and what do you do for them?
Sure. Well, I think everybody knows that I'm from Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm a very happy Red Sox fan for the third World Championship in the last 10 years.
Last
How I
100
got to
years.
Merrill,
Let's get it right. Last 100 years.
oh, last 100 years, you are correct. But seriously, I came to Merrill Brink from a varied career. I started off in the entertainment business here in Los Angeles, segued to middle market investment banking. Then several years ago, somebody mentioned these four magic letters to me, FCPA, and I didn't really know what they meant, but I looked them up, and at the time I was in the translation business, and it occurred to me that FCPA work really lends itself quite well to translation. And I joined Merrill Brink about 3 years ago, and at that time we had I guess, the fortune to be working on a very large, high-profile FCPA case. It started that we were doing scanning on the matter, and we noticed that there was a lot of Chinese language. And from that point, we became involved in the investigation.
Jay, could you tell us how the translations uh, play a role in anti-bribery and anti-corruption investigations, really monitorships, and compliance and ethics programs generally?
Sure. Good question, Tom. What we've noticed, having started on that first matter, and we've probably done somewhere between 10 and 20 in that time, is that there's a certain pace and workflow that happens in an investigation. And there are certain players that usually join together. And one of the things we've noticed is by having this subject matter expertise, in a very short time, we're really able to help our clients come up with an effective strategy on how you manage language in an investigation. So to speak about all those players who come together, locally there's going to be somebody who's involved with forensically doing the data acquisition. Then there may be another person who actually hosts that in an Ediscovery tool. Then there are going to be foreign-speaking document review attorneys who are looking at the data to figure out what is privileged, what is relevant. And then if you were just going to follow that in a linear chain, at that point they probably call in a translation company, a language solutions provider, somebody like Merrill Brink. And what we found is that if you get called in very late in the process, you cannot really be very effective to helping them find the right information and make sure that they're translating things that are relevant as opposed to things that they're not. So I kind of say, you take a look at this, and this is a recipe to make a cake. So that's not very relevant, but this is a recipe to make a bomb. It is very relevant. So the earlier we can get involved with our clients, we can help them come up with a triage strategy to take a look at the foreign language data they have and try to sift through it in a logical manner. And what we'd like to do is try to align the goals of translation with e-discovery. And with e-discovery, you're traditionally starting with a large volume of data, but any type of culling mechanisms and different strategies, you want to take that data down to only the most important things that are going to prove your point or tell your story. And by taking this real systematic and intelligent approach to translation, we found that we've been able to really effectively help our clients run better processes and get better results.
The process that you delineated, uh, most compliance professionals are comfortable with process. And I and others advocate that in many ways compliance is a process. And it sounds like you're bringing a process to what can be a chaotic situation, particularly if someone has received a call or information or read on the front page of the New York Times about allegations of bribery and corruption. Can you explain how you would take that process and maybe expand it, or at least help educate your client on how that process could be used if the investigation just explodes from one country to several countries to really a multitude of countries?
Sure. It's a great question, Tom. In terms of how we approach translations, we're not looking at it as an isolated event. And we realize that the way these investigations happen globally, there may be certain data that's hosted in a country that can't leave that country because of data privacy restrictions. There may be multiple instances of an e-discovery tool that we need to link in with. And what we've been able to do, this is a process that we've developed over the last several years, that we have a workflow where it basically syncs in with the e-discovery process. So when the document reviewers are tagging documents, besides tagging them for responsiveness, they're also going to tag them for do they need translations, what level of translation do they need, and how quickly do they need that turnaround. Then what we're able to do is use a cloud-based intake solution where we sweep that e-discovery tool, we take out the documents, we translate them, and we put them back in. So, whereas you may be a partner at an AmLaw 100 firm, you're really not so concerned about what is the mechanism, what is the transfer, what is the protocol that is used to cull and translate your documents. But I can guarantee you, if you're a second or a third year associate and you're working 28 hours in a row, you're going to want this done in a meaningful and in a predictable manner, so you can have help getting through these large volumes of data and producing what you need to produce.
If I could follow up with a couple of points that you raised in that last answer, and really throughout our visit, you've talked about e-discovery. Can you explain how e-discovery not only ties into the translation work, but if I'm not mistaken, I think Merrill Brink also does e-discovery.
Yeah, thank you for that setup. I'll give you the assist, Tom, and bank this one off the glass. To just kind of set where we are, Merrill Brink is the translation division of the Merrill Corporation. And Merrill is a global business services company that assists our clients with handling regulated and confidential and mission-critical information. So as we spoke about the first matter, how we got involved with doing the scanning, what we're finding now in the marketplace is many of our clients would like an integrated solution where they could find one vendor who can acquire the data, who can host it, who can do the translations. And that is, a process that I think it really dovetails well with the whole, I wouldn't say the whole rationalization that people are trying to look at in costs. And, every day we read about the numbers that are associated with an internal investigation. And those numbers are not only spent on outside professionals, but different vendors. So when you start to take a look at that and you figure out how can we really do this in a better way, if you have one vendor who has the ability and the facility to do this, there's not only certain economies of scale, but there's certain leverage because you don't have to reinvent the wheel each time. And a lot of the times when we deal with somebody that maybe this is their first matter, whether it's a monitorship, whether it's an investigation, they may come into us and tell us, well, this is how we're going to do it. And respectfully, we say, yeah, that sounds great, but let me share some strategies that we've used before in other matters. And when we start to take them through how well we've thought this out in our sophisticated approach, it takes translation away from being a mere commodity, but there really is a certain amount of value add, not only because we've done this before, but especially because we've done it in an FCPA or a monitor capacity. And that not only informs how we approach e-discovery, but we're really able to leverage those results and that institutional knowledge when we help clients with ethics and compliance preventative work.
The other thing that you said I'd like to follow up on is, I believe you used the term level of translation. Can you explain to us what you meant by that?
Sure. One of the things that we're keenly aware of is that when you are doing hundreds of thousands or millions of words and they are being charged off at 20 or 25 cents per word, that very quickly adds up to a significant line item. So our idea in working with our clients, and again, this is what we've learned on doing it, is that you really don't have to take the kitchen sink approach. You don't have to translate everything. And we have a triage process that starts off from using machine translation, which is a very blunt tool. It's only available in 13 languages, but what you can do is, again, use it as a culling device to separate what's relevant and what's not. There's an intermediate step after machine translation called summary translation, where you can have linguists read documents and either code them on 5 to 7 attributes or come up with a basic summary. So an example of that would be, say you have leases for 40 factories. You're not going to want to capture all the boilerplate information, but you're going to want to capture key document information about when the factory came online, how many employers are there, what things they produce there. Then after those two steps, we have a basic translation, which we internally refer to as for information purposes only. A basic translation would be, say you get a ruling in from the court in Ecuador, and you need to know what it means right away. We have a single linguist translate that and do an edit over it, but it's not a final, there's not a second set of eyes. So the reason we say for information purposes only is this is for the legal team to use internally to make a decision. If they needed to use that document as a piece of evidence, after that we'd have another linguist come by, and then based on the agreement of those two linguists, we could issue what we call a certificate of accuracy, a COA, and it's probably commonly referred to as an affidavit. And what that piece of paper will say is, based on the agreement of these two linguists and the project manager from Merrill Brink, we certify this to be the true and accurate translation. So the least expensive thing would be doing machine translation, which is pennies on the page, and the more expensive proposition is getting this down to a certified translation that's either going to be presented to the DOJ or the SEC or an audit committee.
Jay, you've described in a detailed number of steps how translations professionals and translation expertise can be brought to bear in an investigation. Generally in FCPA compliance programs, they're thought of in 3 ways, which are generally along the lines of the following. What did you do to prevent it? What did you do to detect it? And what did you do after you found out about it? So prevent, detect, and remediate. Could you explain to the audience how translations and translations professionals can really move from that detect prong to the prevent prong, and how translations can be a part of your ongoing best practices compliance program?
Sure. One of the things, I believe last week you had Roy Snell on from SCCE, and again, just kudos to that organization for providing a great place for compliance practitioners to meet and share best practices. And one of the things that the SCCE always talks about is you've got a real diverse group of people who come into ethics and compliance. You have people like yourself who come from a legal background. Sometimes there's people who come from a forensics, accounting, or audit background, and then sometimes you get guys from New Hampshire who used to write screenplays. But the equalizing thing there is that these are all people who are very passionate about what they do. And more often than not, they're in a very flat organization, and they're usually resource constrained. So sometimes they can feel the weight of the world is upon them, and they want to figure out, how do I deal with 80 countries, and how do I do 40 languages? And, there's sometimes pressure that you've got the people who are in the field, the people that are in France, the people that are in Mexico. They have their own translation resources. They want to do it. And one of the things that we found is we want to empower ethics and compliance practitioners to really hold fast that you need to develop the initial document in English. You need to have native speakers of the target language translating that document so that people in the field will understand it. And then the other thing you really need to do is think about how can you use language as an advantage and how it's not going to be something that holds you back. So, and I think we've discussed this before. If you want to write a policy, talk about zero tolerance for bribery and anti-corruption. Don't talk about you have to do this because it's because the FCPA says it or the UK Bribery Act. Also, think globally. How will this document play with the people? So one of the things that we tell all our ethics and compliance customers is not only do we suggest this, but we really almost say you have to, after you take this first draft that we've translated, send it out to the folks who aren't in the field and get their opinion. Number one, it gives them a chance to be a participant in it and get some buy-in. And number two, you really get an opportunity to make sure that you're using terminology that is correct for the industry and for the organization. So by starting off from, this is going to be a document to help people, not to catch them. So the code and the training and the stuff is not about being the hall monitor, but it's about really creating a resource that is in somebody's own language and that speaks from their perspective on if they're confronted with an ethically challenged position, how should they act, what should they do, and who are the right resources that they can call in an organization to back them up. And, I think this is something that is commonly understood from the English side, but once that code is developed, there really tends to be some different ways to take that code out into the field. And sometimes people are penny wise and pound foolish, and they might want to use their own in-house source resources to translate instead of having a professional language solutions provider. And they might not want to go through all the steps of vetting it and validating it and make sure that it not only works for the home office, but it also communicates the intent to those global stakeholders.
Is one of the services or one of the expertise Merrill Brink can deliver or at least bring to the party is to help companies understand to perhaps de-Americanize their compliance program and more roundly globalize it? Is that something you guys can assist with?
Yeah, and one of the things that you're going to learn is, and you know, Merrill Brink also works with our colleague Matt Ellis in the FCPA Americas blog, and one of the things that we've been keenly aware of when we're working with Matt and his colleagues is that we are translating from English into Portuguese into Spanish. And there's even real subtle variations and differences about how you describe things. So one of the things that we do is we have a group of people who do this day in and day out. And we're able to pull talent from both sides of the house. So we can take the investigative side that's usually going from a foreign language into English. And we can also take the folks who are going English into a foreign language. And those folks have the same skill set. And by being in the arena, they not only understand how mission critical this is, but they have a lexicon that they use within the compliance arena. And yes, it is possible to go to a non-specialist translation company, but they may give you more of a literal on-the-nose interpretation instead of giving you what is specific from not only a legal point of view, but from an ethics and compliance and risks perspective.
I heard yesterday I was at a conference where I believe a speaker from Coca-Cola talked about the number of countries that Coca-Cola is in, and basically they're in every country except Iran, Cuba, and North Korea. But the challenges that they have had in not only translating their code and their compliance program, or at least their compliance policy statement, but also to really put it in a language that is understandable, de-Americanized, and using that translation then to train local people, to train the trainers so that they could drive that down further. Is that some of the concepts you're telling us?
Exactly. And one of the things that we try to recommend to our clients is that there should be a lot of repurposing of this material. So what normally tends to happen is the code gets refreshed first, and then after the code you have some policies that might go along, whether anti-bribery, anti-corruption, trade association. A lot of that information, what we recommend they do is work with a language solutions provider who provides translation memory. And what translation memory lets you do is basically build up your own custom dictionary. So whether there are certain terms that are, respective to the corporation or to the industry, when you do that in your initial code, you start banking that. And then what's easier is when you refresh in 6 months or a year, it's already there, it's already in multiple languages, and there's usually a payback on leverage on that going forward because the additional trainings and the things that are going to flow from that, there will be a lot of repurposing from the material. So there might be a little bit of initial pain building that translation memory, but it pays for itself. And then when you're in a situation like a Coca-Cola or another global organization, you're going to need somebody not only to help you translate it but manage those documents. And imagine if you're going into 40 languages, plus you're sending those languages out to the field for feedback. That's one of the specialties that our linguists and project managers are able to do, to track the stages of the approvals and to final everything and get the information back out. One other further thing that we do, we have had instances where we're working with clients that it might be an agricultural client where the majority of the employees do not have internet. So not only do we do the code, but we can print it and help them distribute it globally if you want a physical code as well.
Jay, we're near the end of our time here, so I wondered if our listeners would like more information on Merrill Brink, where they might go, and if they wanted to contact you, how they might do so.
Great, thank you, Tom. To learn more about Merrill Brink, you can go to www.merrillbrink.com, and that's spelled MERRILLBRINK. For further information from me, please feel free to reach out to me at jay.rosen, ROSEN, at merrillcorp.com. So it's MERRILLCORP.com. And as we all like to say, we're very active in LinkedIn. So if you'd like to reach out to me there, I'd be happy to give you information. And, one other thing just to close with, Tom, a lot of the times when we're speaking with our clients, yes, sometimes it's about the nuts and bolts and how many words and the cost per word, but a lot of the time we're also able to share best practices. And there are some organizations that we speak with, and this is their first time building out a code and doing it. And, just to talk about the Coca-Cola example, I was recently able to speak with a client and say, Coke is doing some really interesting things where they're doing these animated shorts. So although our focus is on the translation either from investigations or compliance, we're also willing to share best practices and let you know some of the success stories and the strategies that work for our clients.
Well, great. Jay, we're at the end of our time. I really appreciate you coming on board and talking to us and to our listeners about language solutions as a compliance, our language translations as a compliance solution. I think it's been really helpful and very informative. So with that, I will say thank you very much, and we're going to sign off.